Hello, my name's Cody McCoy, and this is my portfolio review. So to start, let's take a look at my goals. My goals in the next 1 to 5 years is to become an assistant principal. I would love to stay in Kansas City, Kansas public schools, but only time will tell where my journey takes me. In 6 to 10 years, I'd like to become a building principal. Um, that's what I'm really passionate about is I want to grow and learn as an assistant principal and then hopefully one day become the principal of a high school. After 10 years, I put unknown because I can't ever see myself leaving a school. I don't think that I want to work at a central office setting or be an assistant superintendent. I've considered going back to school, but and getting another endorsement. However, I really think that my home will be in a school around kids. As far as personal goals, um, my wife and I began getting healthy a couple years ago, and that's still a big goal of mine. It's something I want to keep doing and don't want to stop doing. And in 6 to 10 years from now, personally, I'd like to have another child and buy a house. Taking a look at my resume, um, my resume has changed quite a bit over the last couple of years. Uh, but you can see on here where I have my experience, where I am currently in a role as Dean of Students at Washington High School. Um, I was an administrator at summer school last year, and then I taught for 5 years prior to that. For my district activities, the district activities that I wanted to highlight um, were this was a district activity that I went to. It was a meeting over Indicator 4. Indicator 4 was a um, is an issue that my school district is having with the state of Kansas. We are currently far more likely to suspend an African American male with a disability than any other district in the state. And so part of this meeting was we went and we created an action plan on how we were going to lower that suspension number. The next district activity was restorative justice training. My district is currently moving away from a traditional model of discipline and moving toward restorative practices. The district put this training on at Washington High School, and I attended it. The next one that I would like to highlight is I went to the administrator training for our student information system, the behavior module for Infinite Campus. This was a great training. I was able to help coach teachers. I was able to even assist our administrators when it came to the discipline module within Infinite Campus when they had questions. Collaborating with key stakeholders. This activity is probably my favorite. I interviewed a police officer, Officer Jeffrey Johnson. I interviewed him, and our discussion was based around how the administration and police officers could better collaborate because currently, especially in Washington, and I know in other schools around the district, the police officers don't feel like they're being used appropriately or even to the full of their abilities. This activity. I created a summer school staff handbook. Like I mentioned on my resume page, I volunteered, or I was an administrator for summer school last summer in 2018, and I volunteered to write the summer school handbook. And then finally, the last activity, I interviewed our executive director for secondary schools, Dr. Tucker Nevels, about curriculum and kind of what was coming next for curriculum in the district and how she saw that fitting into the future of Kansas City, Kansas public schools. For my elementary activities, I did 6 elementary activities. The first, I interviewed Banneker Elementary's acting principal, Walt Thompson. This was one of the most interesting and enjoyable activities that I did as a part of this portfolio. Walt has been in education for over 40 years. He has taught, he taught elementary school. He was a principal. He's a principal at elementary now, but he's been a principal at a high school. He served in central office in a district leadership role. And so we talked in this meeting about how he goes about instilling a vision in schools, and and a little bit about his personal leadership philosophy. For this category, I created a Powtoon over differentiated instruction that I can share with teachers and other administrators. This will just help our special education population be more integrated into the school, which is always a good thing. For this category, I attended a Behavior Intervention Support Team Leadership Conference, or BIST. I attended this. It was a 2-day conference in downtown Kansas City, and I was able to collaborate with lots of elementary principals, and we were able to talk about discipline at the elementary level and how it differs from the high school level, and it was very beneficial. For this activity, I created a flowchart for parents and for teachers who are interested in the steps it takes to obtain an IEP. When I was a teacher, all the way up until I completed this activity, I had a lot of questions about what it took to obtain an IEP for a student. And that was very frustrating for me, because I would have parents ask me what they should do, but I wasn't sure what my role was, or if I was going to overstep if I told them what their rights were. And part of that was because I wasn't fully sure of their rights. My category 5 activity for elementary is this picto chart I created about FAPE. FAPE is, the free and appropriate public education is so crucial to all educators, but I don't feel like we discuss it enough. This is a great elementary activity. It could be used for a secondary activity as well, but this one I kind of catered toward an elementary teacher, something that they'd want to hang up in their classroom, or something an elementary administrator could hang up in their office. And then finally, I created this Parents' Rights Powtoon to inform parents about their rights regarding their student's IEP. This one's really interesting because I feel like this is something that, at least I know in our district, when I've attended IEP meetings, parents are always given parent rights and they have to sign off. And I understand the paperwork side of it, that we have to do that, but something like this would be extremely valuable for those parents to see. It's just a little bit more user-friendly and a little easier to navigate than just the paperwork. All right, so my secondary activities, I did 13 secondary activities because I see myself working in a high school or middle school when I do become an administrator. My first one, as far as my first one for category 1, we had some goals, and one of our goals was to increase classroom engagement and cut down on non-classroom setting issues. So for this activity, I researched how to decrease disruption from students in non-classroom settings. We were having issues with students skipping class and causing disruptions in the hallway while instruction was going on. So I did research. I found a study with similar demographics, a study that was conducted with similar demographics as the high school I work in. And then I created a plan and proposed that plan and research to my administration, and they were very excited about it, and they went ahead and let me go on with it. And then I created a schedule for teachers to help in the hallway on their planned period and asked them to sign up. This here is a behavior intervention chart that I created. I created it just to be kind of like a one-page flyer that I could give to teachers. This way they didn't have to navigate our code of conduct, because our code of conduct can be kind of confusing and cumbersome. This I volunteered to compile behavior data for the administration on a monthly basis. I compiled the data and I shared it with them at their leadership meetings. This was probably my favorite secondary activity from an instruction standpoint. This activity I was able to attend. I was able to go with one of our assistant principals on his classroom observations. I used the same form that he did, and I conducted post-observation conferences with the teachers as well. On this one, I worked with our administration and school social worker for this activity, and I helped develop the Washington High School Wildcat Room. I attended the meeting where the regulations and what was going to happen in the Wildcat Room, which is our ISS, was going to happen, and I volunteered to create the form that we were going to send home to parents. For this activity for Category 3, I served as the administrator on duty for several sporting events. These sporting events included all kinds of things that happened mostly in the spring of this last school year, baseball, softball, track. But the important part of this is that I spent a lot of time managing adults. I was in charge of making sure other adults who were there for crowd supervision and concession stands were there and on time. And I noted what time they left for when they turned in their timesheet. I attended a master schedule meeting for Category 3. This was very informative, and it's something that I knew nothing about beforehand. This is a demographic data presentation that I created and shared. This was very eye-opening for me. It helped me realize kind of the demographics of the students we were working with a little more clearly. And this one I collaborated with our police officers. Again, there's a program at Washington High School called SAFE, Seatbelts Are for Everyone. And so I helped them plan their meetings next year, where they would be when they would be held. And then they invited me to take a larger role in it next year. They want to partner with some staff members to come just be with the kids and talk to them about wearing their seatbelts and other issues around positive interactions with law enforcement. For this Category 5, I volunteered to present information at disciplinary hearings. These are due process hearings for when students are being suspended. Anytime after 10 days is considered a long-term suspension. So this was very interesting because these meetings are kind of formal, and you have to really pay attention to student rights and do kind of everything exactly how it's supposed to be done. So this was a great experience for me. For this activity, last school year, at the end of 2018, I volunteered to host extended school year at Washington High School. So I was the administrator on duty. I staffed it. I dealt with all of the day-to-day operations, and it was a great experience. For this activity, I conducted a survey about an initiative that we took to kind of clean up the hallways and presented it to the staff. And this is a flowchart that I created about discipline for students who have an IEP. And this is just something for teachers and administrators to use to make sure that they are within the students' rights. My next thing to discuss is my reflection. My reflection was really interesting. This is one of my favorite parts of the portfolio, because I was able to really think about my time at Fort Hays and how I went into the program and the preconceived notions that I had, but also really think about what happened. And my favorite part of this was the synthesis stage of the reflection, just because this is where I was able to really think about it and reflect, and it made me really fond of the last 2 years that I spent at Fort Hays. And so I have to say that I really enjoyed this reflection. And I read somewhere Doc Moody had written, or it was a quote that he had put on about it's not finishing, but it's about kind of the journey. And this reflection really helped me with that. Thank you for viewing my portfolio highlight video. I look forward to our meeting and any feedback you have for me.